You're listening to the Bears Barroom Radio Network, and the following program is suitable for all audiences.
Paxson for three! Yeah! Yeah!
In 1993, when Chicago Bulls guard John Paxson sunk the series-winning shot in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Mark Schanowski was there reporting. In 1988, when Michael Jordan beat Dominique Wilkins in what is considered the greatest, most controversial slam dunk duel of all time, David Schuster was there reporting.
What kind of expectations do you set for yourself individually going into your career?
In 2010, when Derrick Rose said,
"Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why can't I do that?"
It was Mark Schanowski who asked the question.
It is my distinct honor to present the 2010-2011 NBA Most Valuable Player Award to Derrick Rose of the Chicago Bulls.
In 2011, when Rose accepted the Most Valuable Player Award to become the youngest MVP in the history of the league, David Schuster was there reporting. Schanowski, Schuster, two of Chicago's most accomplished NBA reporters. This is Sharpshooters.
And that's it. It's over. This historic 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers.
And welcome into a very special edition of the Sharpshooters. I'm David Schuster. He, of course, is Mr. Mark Schanowski. And we're coming to you late on Sunday night as the NBA season has finally come to a conclusion. It's three and a half months later than normal, due, of course, to the pandemic. But kudos, and before we even get to the game itself, Mark, I got to do this. We got to pass on kudos to the league, Adam Silver and his entire staff. I thought what happened in the bubble in Orlando for the, 3+ months was unbelievable. Now, the ratings might not have been very great, but the play most of the time was outstanding. And again, kudos to the NBA and specifically Adam Silver and his staff for pulling this off.
Yeah, they did a remarkable job. There's no question about it. To be contained in that environment for that long of a period of time and no positive cases amongst the players was simply a testament to the plan that Adam Silver and the rest of the NBA leaders came up with. They consulted with all the leading medical experts. They came up with a plan that they knew would be safe, and that's why even though there was a lot of outside pressure for Adam Silver to try to rush the NBA back into business, because fans were missing sports so much, he said, we're not going to come back until it's safe for the players and everyone else involved. That's what they accomplished. They got through the rest of the regular season and the playoffs without incident. It was some really good basketball. Fortunately, the last game of the year turned out to be a blowout, but for the most part, the playoffs were fun to watch. It was very entertaining, and congratulations to the Lakers. As anyone who knows me knows, I'm not a big LeBron fan, but he played very well throughout these finals and throughout the playoffs, and he gets championship number 4, getting a little bit closer to the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan.
Jeannie, I told Jeannie when I came here that I was going to put this franchise back in a position where it belongs. Her late great father did it for so many years, and she just, took it on after that. And for me to be a part of such a historical franchise is it's an unbelievable feeling, not only for myself, but for my teammates, for the organization, for the coaches, for the trainers, everybody that's here. We just want our respect. Rob wants his respect. Coach Vogel wants his respect. Our organization wants their respect. Laker Nation wants their respect. And I want my damn respect, too.
Yeah, and this was for the Lakers franchise, their 17th NBA championship. I believe that ties the Celtics for the most in NBA history. And the Lakers do win Game 6, 106-93. It wasn't nearly as close as that. I think they led by, how many did they lead by, Mark? Was it 36
I think it was like
34.
Point? Yeah, it was
34.
It was a complete mismatch. And the defense that the Lakers played was unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're not really known for always being a defensive stopper kind of team. Anthony Davis, of course, is excellent defensively. LeBron can be at times when he really puts his mind to it. But their rotations were on point throughout Game 6. Jimmy Butler couldn't get any operating room. Tyler Hero got off to a real nervous start, and Bam Adebayo struggled early, even though he patted his stats late.
Butler tied up to Adebayo. Picks it out to Tyler Hero. Shot clock winding down. Gets inside. Blocked.
kudos really to Jimmy Butler for carrying that team to 2 victories. They were so outmanned against the Lakers, and to get 2 off L.A. is really a testament to what kind of player Jimmy has become. He really stole those games with his force of will and just carrying that a young group that really wasn't ready for this final stage. But for them to win 2 games, I thought was pretty impressive.
Butler says, "Give me the ball." Butler the drive, the runner, he banks it in. Oh, what a masterpiece from Jimmy Butler.
You know, Mark, as always, you're one better than I am. I had the Lakers winning this series in 5. You said 6, so you were right on the money as always. And as far as this particular Game 6, really the second quarter was the story. The Lakers outscoring them by 20 in that quarter. That's more than the difference in the game, 36-16. And it was their defense. You're 100% correct again. Their defense just forced the Heat to get totally out of their offense. I mean, Jimmy, I think, especially after the last game when he was beyond magnificent, I think he ran out of gas in this game, and I think you could sort of tell he would get into the lane quite often early in the game, but instead of trying to put up shots at the rim, he would, throw the ball back out to the perimeter, and the Heat just were missing shots left and right overall and then turning the ball over as well. And you knew it wasn't going to be a Jimmy Butler kind of game because he missed free throws, especially early in the contest.
Right.
So, the better of the 2 teams, the more talented of the 2 teams, and I think that's one of the major differences, is that the Heat just didn't have enough stars to go against the best team, star-wise in the league, in Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And I thought Mark Jackson at the end of the game saying that the Lakers are not the most talented team in the league is sort of ridiculous because they have 2 of the 3 best players in the world. So that trumps everything.
That kind of gives you
a
big advantage. And what you said about Miami ran out of gas is 100% true. We saw them, really playing above their talent level for most of the series, but they just were completely worn out. One of the staples of their offense is to try to get a guy driving to the basket and then to bounce the ball into a cutter going to the hoop. And those passes were getting stolen today. Obviously, the Lakers did their film study. They know what Miami likes to do offensively. But I think a lot of those were just careless turnovers. The passes were lazy. They had no real steam behind them. And they were pretty easy for the Lakers to step in and steal. Miami, they tried their best throughout this series. But Jimmy played, 47.5 minutes the other night and had a triple-double and was remarkable in carrying Miami to a victory in Game 5. But he had really nothing left. The tank was completely on empty. I'm sure in his post-game comments, Jimmy will say he was fine. They just didn't play well.
We don't play for stats here. We don't play for anything else except for the win. I didn't do that. I didn't do my job. And I'll be better. Along with everybody else, I'll be better coming back. And, you soak on this because what could have been, but it didn't happen. We didn't win, and that's what you leave this at.
But you could see the entire Heat team, they were completely worn out. And once the Lakers hit them with that big run in the second quarter, I believe it was something like 41-18 was the run. They opened up a plus 20 lead, and the game was over by halftime. The last 24 minutes were just garbage time and a coronation for the Lakers. I felt bad for the Heat to go out this way, but really they have nothing to hang their heads about. They played over their heads throughout this series, especially after the injuries to Bam and Goran Dragic in Game 1.
And certainly the numbers in Game 6 told the story. And maybe it's fitting that LeBron James finishes it off with another triple-double, 28 points, 14 rebounds, 10 assists. Anthony Davis, 19 points, 15 rebounds, only 2 block shots, but boy, he altered so many other shots in this game. And honestly, I thought the Heat were just scared to go in the lane when he was, underneath the basket. And of course, Rajon Rondo, good for him. Rajon Rondo off the bench, 19 points on 8 of 11 shooting, and he beat Jimmy to the basket on about at least 3 different occasions.
Shot clock down to 5. Rondo gets across the lane, spins inside, left-handed layup. Oh, Rajon Rondo putting on a show here in the first half.
And I got to say this about Rajon Rondo. And someday, and I saw one of your tweets earlier tonight that he will make a coach someday, and I think he'll make a really good one because his intelligence for the game of basketball is just off the charts. He's also, and it's really amazing, he'll probably play another 5 or 6 years if he wants to. I'm not sure how old he is. He's probably in 34, 35 or something like that. But, he's in such amazing shape. And when he was here with the Bulls for that short period of time, I was just amazed at how incredibly in shape that this guy was and his intelligence for the game of basketball. And good for him. He gets another NBA title.
Yeah, his basketball IQ is amazing. We've heard stories, and we witnessed it in person with the Bulls, where he will call out opposing team sets before they even cross half court. He's just so advanced in terms of being able to understand what other teams are doing and what his own team is trying to do. It was interesting in the second half. The Lakers are up by 30, and he's trying to yell instructions to LeBron and AD. Hey, we got to do this next time down court. And the guys are almost laughing at him like, hey, did you see the scoreboard? We're winning by 30 points. But that's just how Rondo is wound up. He's, a very ultra-competitive guy, very detailed person, wants to make sure that every possession is done in the right way. And I think that's going to make him an excellent NBA head coach. I had somebody ask me, well, what about his issues with teammates? He's not really popular with other players. And I said, really, Rondo is very popular, especially with helping the young guys. He'll show up early, stay late, try to help young guys develop their games, try to pay attention to detail, and I think that is going to serve him well. I heard an interview with him the other day where he said that he'd like to either be a coach or a GM, and I think either way he goes, he's going to be excellent at it.
Yeah, I would take umbrage with anybody who says he's not a good teammate and his teammates don't like him. Listen, anybody who understands the game of basketball like he does, and I think you saw LeBron James giving him special kudos not only after the game but throughout the game as well. I think they understand what kind of teammate and what kind of player he is. So I just don't think that, listen, he's very opinionated. There's no question about that. And if that ruffles some feathers, so be it. But I think anybody who has any intelligence about the game of basketball and understands what a good teammate really is all about would know that Rajon Rondo is definitely a good teammate. As far as LeBron, this is the only place where I will put him over Michael Jordan, is that at the same age, and it's amazing, Mark, he's in his 17th year in the NBA, and if he's not the best player on the planet, he's certainly in the top 3 as far as I'm concerned. He's just amazing how he continues to be at the level that he continues to be. It just blows me away.
Kendrick Nunn drives, back out, stolen by James. As James drives, gets inside, layup, banks it home, and a foul. James drives, James finishes. And the Lakers just keep pouring it on.
And I have a feeling that this Finals MVP is going to have a trophy named after him one day. The Finals MVP is LeBron James.
Well, Michael Jordan, of course, was 35 when he won his last championship with the Bulls in 1998, and LeBron is now 35, but he's still going strong. He's still at the height of his powers, and I'm sure that the Lakers will continue to fill around the edges to make sure that LeBron is the best team possible as they go forward. It's going to be more competitive next season. You're going to have the new team in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. You're going to have Golden State being whole again. You're going to have the other teams in the East. Milwaukee's going to try to improve by reloading around Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's going to be challengers. The Clippers will be back, of course, with a new head coach, and most likely with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard giving it another shot. I think that it's going to be a little bit harder for the Lakers to try to repeat as champions. I mean, heck, repeating as champions is always a difficult challenge, and I'm not sure that the Lakers are going to be the number one favorites going into next season, but anytime you have, as you mentioned, two of the best 5 players in the league, and LeBron and Anthony Davis, you're definitely going to be on the short list of favorites going into the season.
Let me ask you, Mark, if this was not in the bubble this postseason, would the outcome still have been the same? I think it would have, personally. I think it would have been harder for the Lakers, and it was hard enough as it was, because once you have to literally travel from city to city, through the course of about, 2 months of a playoffs, I think that would, make it that much harder. But just the fact that they did it under different, hopefully never to be seen again circumstances was tough enough as is. But do you think the outcome would have been the same even if they didn't play in the bubble?
Yeah, I think most likely. Obviously the two teams that I was kind of pulling for different reasons, the Bucks because I'm a Milwaukee native, and the Clippers because I picked them to win the championship, both flamed out. Milwaukee really early, losing to Miami in 5 games, and then the Clippers blowing a 3-1 lead against Denver in the conference semifinals. I think basketball fans feel a little bit cheated. We didn't get to see the Battle of LA, which would have been a lot more fun to watch had it been at Staples Center, which really would have been 7 home games for the Lakers. But, that was the series I think everyone wanted to see, how LeBron could match up against both Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think the Clippers were best equipped to give the Lakers a battle and maybe beat them in a 7-game series. It's unfortunate as basketball fans we didn't get a chance to see that. But, give credit to Denver. They were down 3-1 in that series. They came back to earn a trip to the conference finals. And I think that really made it a little bit easier for the Lakers to advance. And ultimately, with the injuries Miami suffered in Game 1, as I mentioned, with Adebayo and Dragic going out, there was really very little chance that Miami was going to muster much of a challenge. I think the one thing that really came out of this is Jimmy Butler has really sent a message to the NBA world that he needs to be respected as an elite player, not only for what he does on the court, for his ability to galvanize a team and lead a younger group, which was one of the things he was not able to do in his previous stops. I think, in terms of legacy, LeBron is the big winner, of course, getting the 4th NBA title, but I think Jimmy Butler earned a world of respect, not only from Bulls fans, but from basketball fans around the world, because what he did in carrying the Heat to those 2 victories was really remarkable.
And we'll talk about the Bulls in just a second here before we come to a conclusion with this podcast here, but I do want to talk about the East. Miami will certainly be back, and I think they'll be better down the road, and I think they showed you a blueprint of what you need to do. You have to have shooters, and Mark, you were so right. That was the reason they got by Milwaukee. That was the reason they got to the NBA Finals before finally running out of gas. They have so many shooters, and a lot of those kids, and I use the word kids, they're so young, they're only going to get better as time goes on. But ultimately, Miami's going to need another star player. And I don't put anything past Pat Riley. He'll understand what he needs to do to get over the hump here. He'll have some money, coming his way as far as the cap, down the road here also. So Miami will be really good, of course, for the next 2, 3, 5 years, and they'll build around Jimmy as well. Brooklyn will be better, obviously, getting Kyrie and Durant back. I'm sure Milwaukee will try and do everything they can to keep Giannis up there and try and build further around him. And then some of the other teams will try and improve as well. So the East will be definitely more and more competitive over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. Start off with Brooklyn with Durant and Irving, and then Karis LeVert really emerging as a star late in the bubble with some really remarkable games. And they've got some other good young players, Spencer Dinwiddie and Jared Allen. I think Brooklyn's going to be a team to watch. It's going to be fascinating to see what Doc Rivers can do in Philadelphia. I mean, you didn't even mention them with the 2 stars and Embiid and Ben Simmons, and I assume that with Doc Rivers coming in as head coach, you won't see a trade of Ben Simmons. I think the Doc is going to make sure he can try to build around that group. He coached Tobias Harris with the LA Clippers, and I think he's going to try to really elevate Tobias Harris as that 3rd star in that group and see if he can't get that team a little bit further in the East. It's going to be really competitive. As I mentioned, the West is going to be strong with all the teams coming back and Golden State getting healthy again. I think the next season is going to be even stronger, and then a lot of teams are going to be jockeying for position in terms of salary cap to try to go after the elite free agent class during the summer of 2021. And I think that's where Miami is really poised to strike. They're going to have a lot of salary cap space. They're going to try to pair another superstar with Jimmy Butler, whether that's Giannis, whether that's a Kawhi Leonard or a Paul George, some other elite player to come in with Jimmy and try to get that franchise another championship. That leads us right back to Chicago, where it'll be interesting to see if Arturas Karnisovas is going to be patient this offseason or if he's going to try to make a bold move around draft day and maybe add another piece long term. Because, a lot of people say, well, why don't the Bulls just try to develop around their young players? The issue is with the salary cap, you can't max out everybody. You're going to have Lauri Markkanen looking for a max level contract. Zach LaVine has 2 more years on his deal. He's going to be maxed out after that. And then you'll have Wendell Carter Jr. and Kobe White, who are going to want big contracts coming off their rookie deals. So there are, it is a ways off, especially in terms of Carter Jr. and White. But when you look at the long picture, like GMs are always looking 5 years out, they're going to have to decide who fits, who doesn't, and how can they get a legitimate superstar into this mix. And if that means sacrificing some of your young players for maybe a draft pick in terms of trying to keep your cap sheet clean, I'm sure that's something that they talk about in their meetings on a daily basis.
And Mark, we talked about this going back out to the Western Conference. Anthony Davis will have a decision to make. Does he want to sign a long-term deal in Los Angeles? Does he want to sign a short-term deal, maybe a 1 plus a player's option, and just wait to see what LeBron does over the next year or two? That's my guess what he will do to keep his options open. And as long as LeBron is still playing at the level, and again, I'm freaked out that he is able to still play at this level, I'm guessing, and I'm looking at both of them smiling on TV right now, that he's going to want to play with LeBron for at least the next year, maybe 2, and then keep his options open. I want to go back into the entire bubble from the start, Mark, because honestly, you and I were pretty amazed at how good it was even right off the bat, and these guys should have been rustier than they were. But then all of a sudden, right off the bat, T.J. Warren had incredible games, and Damian Lillard from start to finish, averaging 37 points and ending up with a 61-point game to finish off the quote-unquote regular season. There were some incredible performances in the bubble.
Yeah, and the shootout we had in the playoffs between Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell in the opening round, with those guys going back and forth at each other with 50-point games, that was some crazy stuff. We saw the emergence of Devin Booker with the Phoenix Suns. There was a lot of great individual performances. Jamal Murray stamped himself as a guy that's a player to be watched in terms of making that step from being a very good player to a perennial all-star. And we saw a lot of young guys really emerge during the bubble, and the offensive play was really a lot of fun to watch. As we mentioned a couple times on past podcasts, the defense, not so good. I mean, we heard Scottie Pippen with his sour grapes comment about how these were just glorified pickup games, which I don't agree with, but he does have a point in that I don't think the defensive ferocity was there for the most part. Even through the early rounds of the playoffs, they were more shootouts than in terms of locked-in defensive struggles. But it was almost fitting, I guess, in the deciding game, the Lakers turned up the defense, and that was really what solidified their status as NBA champions for the 2019-20 season.
Yeah, I want to make mention of another player who was just incredible in the bubble, and that was Luka Doncic, who has elevated himself certainly into the top 10, maybe even better than that in the NBA. And he's only was he 20, 21 years old? That freaks me out how incredibly talented he is. So we talked about a lot of the positives while they played down in Orlando. And again, kudos to the league for pulling this off. But there were some disappointments. And from a team standpoint, Milwaukee was, unfortunately, and you predicted it, Mark, they were exposed for not being able to do certain things against certain teams, and Miami certainly upended them. I thought the Clippers were exposed, and ultimately that caused Doc Rivers to lose his job in Los Angeles. And then maybe one of the most disappointing things to me was not getting a better chance to see Zion Williamson. I mean, the New Orleans Pelicans had it in mind that he was only going to play, a certain amount of minutes right off the bat. And I don't know why they had that, but okay, they're protecting their franchise and the future, I guess. But it was disappointing, and as his minutes increased, so did his performance. I don't know. That was just disappointing to me overall.
Well, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm afraid that that's going to be a storyline that's going to follow Zion Williamson throughout his NBA career, unless, of course, he makes a commitment to trimming down and staying in peak physical condition. I think that team is always going to be concerned about his ability to play major minutes and be able to play, 70 out of 82 games in a given season. He just has a unique body type that I think is going to make him susceptible to stress kind of injuries in the NBA. And he's an amazing talent. I mean, he's something we really haven't seen much of. He's kind of a larger version of Charles Barkley, and he may be more skilled than Charles was throughout his career. So I hope the kid can stay healthy and see what he can develop into. But I think that's something that, the Pelicans obviously are very concerned about. And I think as a league, you want to see these young guys come in and really make their mark as guys who can make a difference in the league. And I think Zion is one of those guys. John Morant is another. And we've seen some really elite players come into the league over the last several years. This draft coming up, maybe somebody will surprise us. It doesn't look like there's any franchise changers available this year, but I think over the last several years, we've seen some great players come into the league, and that really speaks well for what the NBA is going to look like in the future. You mentioned some of the disappointments. The thing with Milwaukee, obviously, as I mentioned, being a Milwaukee native, I follow that team more closely. They tried an old-fashioned approach with going a lot of veteran players, specialist-type guys, and they got exposed, for not being athletic enough. And I think they're going to really have to make some significant changes there in order to stay at or near the top of the East next season. So that will be one of the teams to watch in terms of what kind of transactions they make. And, I think the rest of the playoff teams, I don't think you'll see as many major changes this offseason because everyone's going to be looking at 2021 and seeing if they can maybe possibly make some salary dump moves in order to get into the chase for some of the elite free agents next year.
I hope you're wrong about Williamson, but I'm afraid you might be right. I mean, he does have a body that seems to have injuries, and he's just, himself, he's only 20 years old, and he's already got a set of injuries. So you might be right about that. Another guy who recently had knee surgery, although it was an MCL and not an ACL, was Kristaps Porzingis. I thought, when I saw Dallas, especially with Doncic and him both playing at a high level before he, unfortunately had to leave the playoffs period, is that Dallas would be a team on the rise. And I wouldn't put it past, Mark, I'm spacing out on their owner right now. Mark Cuban, thank you. I wouldn't put it past him to, somehow figure out a way of getting further involved in free agency as well. So you're right. There's a lot of talented teams, of course, in the Western Conference. As far as the Bulls, I'm just sorry that they couldn't somehow sneak into this bubble. Look at what the Phoenix Suns did, Mark. They didn't qualify for the postseason, but they were 8-0 in the bubble, and that is just going to pay off major dividends to that young franchise. It could have been the same thing for the Bulls if they had a better record. Unfortunately, it wasn't.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about some of the young players who've developed, and Deandre Ayton was a number 1 overall pick, had kind of a disappointing rookie season in Phoenix, but he came on really strong during the bubble, kind of giving you that Shaq-Kobe kind of pairing with Devin Booker. Obviously, they're not to that level yet, and they probably will never get anywhere close to that, but they do have that potential to be really good in that high screen and roll game and being that inside-outside threat that every team always used to like in the past. Now everyone wants to fill the court with three-point shooters and try to play as fast as they can. But you saw what happened in Miami in these finals, getting back to what we saw over the last 10 days. They tried to go small when they took Adebayo out of the lineup and they would play Jay Crowder at center, and they were getting killed on the boards. Anthony Davis was getting all kinds of offensive rebounds, was able to do anything he wanted inside. And I think kind of what that showed is that there still is a place for good athletic bigs, and I think we're going to slowly start to see the NBA maybe going a little bit back to seeing what you can do with some big guys inside. I know that the three-point threat with analytics and everything else is still going to be with us and probably is here to stay, but I think you're going to see some teams maybe trying a little bit of a different approach to go up against these teams that are chucking up 50, 60 three-pointers a night.
Well, you know how I am, Mark. I'm pretty old-fashioned when it comes to basketball. I believe in the big man as long as he's got the talents to play that position. I'm also a big believer in having a point guard, even though I know the league and the game has certainly changed over the years. But it was refreshing to see when Rajon Rondo was on the court with LeBron. LeBron actually deferred to Rondo having the ball in his hands. You know, when somebody else was in the game besides Rondo, the ball was always in LeBron's hands. So I don't know. I just always think that there's a position, a place on any franchise for a quote unquote true point guard. Even though his assists weren't really high in this game, he's got the intellect to be a point guard. I guess the next thing coming up in the league right now will be the NBA draft, and that's about 5 weeks from as we're recording this podcast on Sunday night. And the Bulls will have that number 4 pick as of right now. And certainly in our subsequent podcast before then, we will go in depth on not only what the Bulls will be doing, hopefully, but what other teams in front and behind them will do as well. So there's always basketball, Mark. As you well know, it's 24/7, 365 during the year. There's always something to talk about as far as hoops goes.
And I know the head of the Players Association, Michelle Roberts, has said that December 1st is probably the realistic date for the start of free agency, that she said you can't really push it back much later than that. The class of free agents isn't as exciting as what it's going to be a year from now, but there are always guys out there that can potentially help. I've had people, I know usually in this last segment of the show, we talk about wild trades. I've had people propose, DeMar DeRozan coming to the Bulls and making a move to get Gordon Hayward because they're on the last year of their contracts. And you never know. I mean, there could be something that AK might look at in terms of trying to add another veteran to make themselves a challenger for that 8th playoff spot in the East next season, rather than just looking at it as a transitional year as you try to build a team. There are going to be some teams that they look to move salary off their books, and as long as it's not a long-term commitment, it might be something the Bulls look at. But, in terms of the draft, we've talked about it a lot, and we will talk about it a lot with some of the draft experts over the coming weeks. I'm not that excited about the number 4 pick. If they could work a trade to either move down and get future assets, or maybe just trade out of this draft completely, I'd be all for that. But it will be the next thing that's talked about in the NBA, and we'll see if maybe the Bulls can't get a guy that's maybe a little bit better than people expect.
And, Mark, I want to finish off this particular podcast, and again, we're doing this as the Lakers have just celebrated their 17th NBA championship. They win the final series over the Heat in Game 6, 106-93. I want to end it as I started it, giving kudos to the league and specifically Adam Silver and his staff. And as I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today, I was thinking about his predecessors. And if you think about the NBA over the last, 45 years, they've had 3 incredibly strong commissioners, starting with Lawrence O'Brien, who, the championship trophy is named after. Then David Stern took it to another level. And Adam Silver has not dropped the ball, pun intended, at all. 3 incredible leaders have led this league to where it is. It's a world sport. It's across the entire planet that the NBA, even though the ratings were down, and we all know why, it's because they played specifically in the bubble, and maybe a lot of people were turned off by that and some of the social stuff that the players were spouting off here during this whole time. But it's still unbelievable sport, and I'm just proud to be a small part of it. And kudos again to the NBA.
Yeah, they did a remarkable job under very difficult circumstances, as we mentioned at the top. Congratulations to Adam Silver and his team for putting together such a plan that worked flawlessly. Congratulations to the Lakers for equaling the Boston Celtics with 17 world championships. And begrudgingly, congratulations to LeBron James for carrying the Lakers to the title.
But he'll never be Michael Jordan. He'll never
No, he
be
won't.
Michael Jordan.
No, he
Michael
won't.
Jordan will always be number one. But LeBron, on his tail, but he'll never catch him. Never catch him as far as being the greatest of all time. Hey, Mark, it's been a pleasure. We'll take a little time off, and we'll be back. And like I said, the next time we're here with you folks, we're going to start previewing heavily the upcoming NBA draft. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.